Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of The Gray Zone. I'm your host, Christian Gray, and excited for today's topic of trying hard. What does it mean to try hard? This is a fascinating question, and at least for me, anyways. A fascinating question, because I think there's a lot of assumptions that we don't even realize we make around things that we take for granted, things that we think are very obvious, like trying hard. What is that? What does it mean to try hard? What qualities are involved in trying hard? It seems like the common perception of trying hard is gritting your teeth, tensing up, and like you're taking a big dump or something, you know? And there's an element of truth to that, for sure, of like intense, concentrated, focused effort. But for some reason, there's this tension that's implied, when I think about trying hard from that perspective. And it's interesting to think about how that applies itself in the workplace, for example. But before we get into that, trying hard was something that climbing sort of brought forward for me. It showed me what consistent effort is capable of producing. And when you're consistent in showing up to the gym every day, climbing, looking to improve, climbing's fascinating because it's not just weightlifting. Weightlifting, the movements tend to be more simple, and I'm sure when you get to the extreme levels of weightlifting, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of small changes that can have an impact to how you build muscle, for example. In climbing, it's a little easier to start to see that nuance because you're constantly trying to approach a problem, which is what people call climbs. You're approaching these problems, and they're like puzzles that you need to figure out how to solve with your body by applying strength, technique, breath, like all of these different variables come into play. Your mind, fear, focus, relaxation. And when I start to think about trying hard, not just in a single moment, but across a bigger set of time, all of a sudden I start to think about different connotations of what trying hard can mean. And so I think it's interesting to think about, again, trying hard in a work setting, in a business, corporate setting. There's this kind of frantic energy that comes with trying hard that I seem to notice with a lot of people in the corporate world. We take our jobs seriously. We're focused on wanting to produce really high quality, really good outcomes. And we also live in a world where there's opportunity for distraction around every corner. That doesn't just mean looking at your phone, scrolling through LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever the case might be. It also means Slack messages, working from home and having your kids run up, or your dog barking, or the list goes on, and I'm sure you can fill in a million blanks for yourself. But there's a lot of distractions even within the work environment that can come up on a day-to-day basis. And when we engage in our work with this mentality of, okay, I need to try hard, I need to be really productive, so I'm going to be tense, I'm going to be focused, caffeinated, and you ripping through one task to the next. At times, this is both productive because you're effective, right, in the sense of you're getting a lot done and you're moving through tasks very quickly. Boom, boom, boom. But the problem is if you start to think through, like you're no longer able to read an email or properly listen to your colleagues on a meeting because you're thinking about the 3 or 4 other tasks that are relevant to getting done by the end of the day or the end of the week. And that is where the tension and the effort and that sort of concerted focus of trying hard, I think, can start to become detrimental when we bring that tension into moments that don't require it and don't benefit from it. And I think I'm almost like conflating different things here, because there's the sort of the tension of like trying really hard, and then there's the distraction element of just, you know, being a human and being at work and having a phone. And I want to focus more on the trying hard piece, but I think they're related. Maybe I'll get back to that. Anyways, what I've really learned from climbing is that trying hard is not just in the hardest part of a climb where you're cruxing out. Trying hard also means knowing when it's time to relax and being able to relax fully on a climb. Knowing when it's time to rest, to step away from something, or to focus on a small piece of a bigger picture and putting the rest to the side, or then focusing on the bigger picture. So for example, when you're doing, especially in longer endurance routes, so if you're doing a sport climb that's 30, 40 meters and it's quite challenging for you, if you come in with that sort of concerted, try hard, focused, tense mentality, what happens is you're using way more energy on parts of a climb that don't require it. You're using far more effort, tension in your muscles and in your mind perhaps, which translates to the body for sure, than is required for that section. And when you're 15, 10, 5%, using 10, 5% more effort and tension than is required across a 40-meter climb, by the time you get to the actual hardest part, you don't have the energy to be able to put in maximal effort anymore because you've been wasting it where it wasn't needed for an extended period of time. And so there's an element of trying hard that isn't just about maximal focused output, but it's also, trying hard can be broader. It can be a broader sort of awareness of what is required for each section, and then showing up to each section of the climb where, oh, I can relax here. Okay, let me relax because that'll allow me to recover more for the section where I need to be more tense. Or I need to be really focused for this move. Like, there's times on a climb where you're like 30 meters off the ground, your whole body's screaming at you, and your entire sort of focus of awareness is on a pinky, for example, because you're holding on to this small little edge, and to stay on and to do the next move requires that you get your pinky on top of there. And all of a sudden, everything in the world goes away, and all of you're focusing on is that pinky. And then you expand out your awareness again, and then you move on to the next move. And that kind of comes back to that piece of being able to sort of zone into a task. You're on a call with a colleague who's talking to you about something that's really important, but it doesn't have to do with the task that you were trying to get done for the end of the day. But it's still relevant to the broader sort of success of the business. So being able to zone in on that and then pull back out after the call. And maybe there's a different way of being that, maybe that tension, that like really concerted focus wouldn't actually be beneficial for the call with that colleague because of where they're coming from and what they're trying to talk to you about. Again, being able to navigate these things, I think, is so important. And it's really interesting to me to think about, what does it mean to try hard for you across not just those super intense moments, but across all of it. Because when I start to think about, effort and trying hard and realizing it's not just about being tense and focused and concentrated, but it's also about knowing when to relax, knowing when to take things a little bit more easily, knowing when to really go in on something. I think it actually gives you more permission to relax when the moment gives you that opportunity. And I mean, I do think that a lot of people, myself included, maintain way more tension than is required most of the time. And that exhausts us, it drains us, and it means we don't show up at our best when that's required, which is realistically most of the time. Like, it's always good to show up at your best. And it's fascinating to me how fear plays into this as well. Not necessarily like overt fear, but kind of like underlying fear of wanting to do well, wanting to succeed. It's funny, there's a Taoist philosophy called Wu Wei, which essentially means something along the lines of effortless action or non-doing. And really what it means, super high level, super basically, is go with the flow. But to bring in a little bit more granularity in relation to wanting to succeed and then that causing perhaps detrimental fear, Wu Wei kind of says, like, if you're too focused on something, you end up moving further away from it. It's like if you're really into somebody, you end up pushing them away. Or if you're cold calling somebody and you're too on top of them, reaching out too much, that just pisses people off. And it's similar when it comes to being too focused on succeeding, that brings more tension than is required, and it can detriment you. You're less focused, you miss important details, and more mistakes happen in the long run that then need to be cleaned up. So yeah, this is just something that I was thinking about. I thought it was really interesting to explore as a concept, because it gives, like I was saying, it can give me more permission at times to then recognize what is better for a certain moment, and then show up with that energy, show up with more relaxed demeanor, for example, or more focused, concentrated demeanor with more energy there behind it, because again, I've been able to relax, and it's not something that I'm anywhere close to being able to do and execute on at a high level on a consistent basis. But I find it really positive to think about these things, because it gives me a different frame of reference that I can use to show up in the world, how I operate, and in the long run, by moving towards that, I think I'll end up being more successful and better by not just focusing on the success piece, but also the ideas around it. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this episode. Appreciate it. Have a great day. If you're ever interested in coaching, hit me up. It'd be a lot of fun. Thanks. See ya.